Hello and welcome to our Full Sail University Hall of Fame presentation on how to succeed in a collaborative environment. Welcome all. Can we please get a round of applause and welcome our 4 panelists today? Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, so just going to make some quick introductions and then kind of dive in. So I am Aaron Cook. I'm a senior producer and studio head for Scientific Games.
My name's Laurie Brugger. I'm the head of rigging at Frame Store, currently in Montreal.
My name's Marc Fishman, and I'm a freelance re-recording mixer based out of Los Angeles.
Joey Morelli, editor, Universal Creative.
Cool. So, I mean, this is kind of a big open topic, but just generally speaking, like you guys lead teams, you've made significant strides in your career. What do you think? Like, what have you seen that has led to success for yourself, for your peers, for the people you've brought along?
I'll start. So you'll hear it a lot, but hard work, and I say that for everyone that works for me. I'll give you a little context. So I work in visual effects for movies. I lead a team of locally 15 people. And I also have an office in London who I manage remotely this year, and there's about 20 people there. So lots of challenges, build personal relationships with all these people, but I think hard work is a cliche. But I'm saying that because I think it's relevant now because of something that I've been thinking about myself, which sort of reiterates like how throughout your career is always changing. It's not like you're just solving a problem and yes, I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to get to the top and then that's it. Like what I've realized is recently I've not been working as many hours and I actively feel like that's impacted the performance at my job. You know, like I go home when it's time to go home, and I've really noticed that I don't feel as good at my job.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of not a fun thing to recognize because I try really hard to make sure all my team go home at reasonable hours. But it is the thing that gives some people an edge. Is even though I'm like shooing them out the door at 7 o'clock, there's those people that are like, I'm finishing this. And those people become the superstars in the team and the one that everybody wants on their team and the one that everybody relies on. So it's not to be underestimated in any situation.
Well, and I think my business is a little different because we're at the end of a filmmaking process. So we're sometimes 2 or 3 weeks out before a film comes out, and the visual effects are coming in and they're timing the film and doing all that. But it's a little different because we're paid kind of by the hour. They rent our studio, and we kind of don't have a say if I get to go home at 7 o'clock on, one of the last films I worked on last year, we worked for 48 hours straight just because we needed to get done. They had a deadline. So it's a little different, but I think one of Laurie's first points was really important is that once you kind of get into the business and you're working and people want to work with you, you're there because they know you can do the job. And we'll talk about this as it goes on, but the collaborative part of it then becomes about your relationships and how you treat people and how you work in that environment. And I think that's a really important thing we can discuss a little bit more.
Yeah, and being open to feedback and taking it constructive feedback well and applying it and because in my business all of our businesses actually, it's a collaborative and it's a very iterative experience. Like there's a lot of revisions, especially in the business I'm in, which is post-production. I just started at Universal about a year ago, which is a completely new industry for me. I came from 9 years at EA Sports. And anyone who works in games knows about crunch time and about overtime and about the constant, I was posting a lot of empty parking lot pictures because I would not get out of work sometimes till 3, 4 in the morning. So, during crunch time, I would work 2-3 weeks straight without a day off. And now I'm in an environment where they're very family friendly. If I have some kind of an emergency at home or something, like Terry calls me and the dishwasher is leaking, he says, go home, family first. The work will be here when you get back. So, and you start to, like you said, you feel differently because you don't feel like you're spending all of your time at work, and you're starting to feel a little bit less stressed. And it's priceless to work in an environment where it's collaborative and it's also family friendly.
Cool. Yeah, so I was in a panel earlier and somebody was talking about when they do their hiring, one of the questions that their leader asks them is, does this person excite you? Like, what are the kinds of things that get you excited about a person that you're working with, that you're looking to bring onto your team? Like, what are the things that you look for? I know we already talked about hard work.
Well, I interview and hire a significant amount of people over the last 6-7 years, and I look for nice people who are smart and who care about their work and who really want to work for us. So, like, they are motivated to work with us specifically, and they've got a good attitude. You know, they've collaborated in their student projects. I look for that. I ask them about what was their role with that group project, and what did you think about that other person's work, and to get an idea about how much of a team player they are, basically, because in my department it's like so important because not one person can do everything. It's impossible. So you always have to put a team of people together, all with different strengths that support each other, and everybody plays their part. And I look for that in interviews for examples of that on student reels.
Well, and again, it's always going to be a little bit of a contrast because the film world in post-production audio is a little different, and I don't hire anybody, I get hired, and so I have to be part of a team. And as the lead re-recording mixer, I'm kind of tasked with making sure everything gets done and scheduling things towards the end as far as how we're going to get things done. But I have to work with people sometimes that I don't like, or that are difficult, or have their own agendas. And so you start learning how to kind of deal with those different personalities. And I think over the years you get more experience. I was much happier in my job when I realized that my job was being told what I do wrong all day. Because if you were going to mix a movie and it was perfect, you'd mix it in 2 hours, and sometimes we can take months. And so once you kind of let that sheen down and just kind of start understanding that that's part of being in a collaborative world, the film world is collaborative, you just start learning how to communicate with people, and it just comes a lot from experience. And you're not always with the best, funnest people, but you learn how to deal with that too, and then you kind of find something in the project you really like to get you through when you have these really tough ones.
Yeah, my current role, I am not on a hiring team, but at EA I was a senior, and I was invited to all screenings, all reel reviews, all application reviews and resume reviews, and I learned a lot about people going through that, and I learned what we really wanted, what we were really looking for was people who, first of all, weren't lying on their reel or resume, because a lot of people, we would ask them about, really like what you did with that shot. Can you break it down, tell us how you did it? I was amazed how many people couldn't actually explain their shots on their reel. So and we went through hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of reels, and when they could, what we were really looking for was relationships, like people, like Laurie said, like a nice person, like someone, because in a gaming environment, you're working in massive amounts of like cubicles and areas where people are all sitting very in close quarters for long hours, and you really want to work with somebody who you get along with. I mean, those people you end up seeing more than your own family most of the time. So they really have to be nice. It's a screening process where it's almost like a psychological review as well as a technical review. So,
cool. Marc, you'd mentioned personality and understanding people and how to communicate to them on their terms. What advice would you give in terms of like learning personality theory and learning how to negotiate and learning how to communicate with people? Because that's a very challenging soft skill to cultivate and develop.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. I heard a quote a couple weeks ago, and I wish I had heard this when I started in the business, and it was, the only thing a human being can do that they're good at doing by themselves is getting the start of a great idea. And when I heard that, I started thinking backwards to like my life in this business, because you think, oh, I've got the best idea and all this. And what I found is, if you realize, and I'm stealing this analogy from somebody else, it's like if you're playing a football game and you're trying to get the ball to the 90, the 10-yard line, and the director takes it over the edge. And the way that you start learning how to do that is you talk about things that usually aren't about the movie or this. You try and learn about the people and learn about who they are. Some people, that's all they care about is the film business, and that's all they care about. But I've found it's just really good to listen. I've worked with some notoriously difficult directors, and every time what I learned, some really difficult people, and every time I just didn't say anything until I was talked to. And sometimes it was 2 or 3 days. You'd be sitting in the room, and then they realized you were paying attention, and then they started saying, oh, well, so what do you think? And that was one of my biggest, I think, secrets after all these years was, if you become a really good listener, then people will want to know what you have to say. And I think it's hard when people come out, they're really eager to kind of show, oh, I went to Full Sail and I did this and I know everything. And being a good listener, I think, is so like the most important thing.
Oh, sure.
And that's a really interesting point, and it makes me think that we're all making money from making our stuff, right? So like, it's not about us; it's about the stuff that we're selling, because that's giving us paychecks, right?
Right.
So thinking about what's best for the project and what is going to make the quality of the project the best is the priority. And in my instance, it's almost always not down to any specific individual, like having complete ownership over this one element, and it just doesn't work like that, because it's not about them. And actually, it's a liability in a way, because if someone maintains a huge amount of control over any one aspect of the pipeline or of the work, it's actually a liability, because we don't know what that person's going to do tomorrow, or it's so important to spread it around. And I wanted to just come back to one thing, which was I talked a little bit about what qualities we're looking for in hiring, but actually on my team, the people that are there, the things that I love to see from them are ideas, as you said. But there's an idea is valuable, but it's only one piece of the puzzle, right? So you have the idea on how to solve a problem, then you actually have to like execute it, come up with a plan and execute it. And then you have to communicate like how, so that people use it. Like if you're developing a tool. So it's actually 3-pronged. So I have some people throughout my career that are full of ideas, but they're not very good at executing. Or people who can like take a brief and just like go crazy with their code, blah, blah, and they have the most amazing tool, but nobody's using it. And that's where collaboration comes in, because it's very rare that any one person is good at all of those things. So you have to, lean on other people that are strong where you're weaker.
Cool. So, Joey, you have worked in games and have transitioned back into film. How does collaboration? Is it just like it's just the same? It's entertainment. We're making stuff to like just bring joy to the world, or is it different in some way because of the nature of the beast and because of the way the environment is built?
Well, it's post-production. I mean, I worked in games, but I was making videos for in-game and for marketing. So the way those things got into the game, I actually learned through, Kerry is one of the inductees this year. It turns out that we worked together on a Madden game, and we didn't even meet.
Yeah.
Because I would make the videos, and he would write the code to put the videos in the game, but we have credits on the game, but we never met. It's a very collaborative process. As you know, I mean, when you create an edit and you sit, I was lucky. I had an edit suite. I didn't have to sit in a room full of people, but all of the executives would come in and like you said, Mark, when you're dealing with personalities and people who not necessarily know how to express themselves, I want to say politely when they express their opinions, but these are the guys signing the paychecks, and you have to learn how to collaborate on a level where you have to accept their feedback, and you have to ask the questions and not get personally attached to any of your work, and just apply everything. And yeah, every industry that I've been in, I started advertising, and then broadcast TV, and then video games. Now, themed entertainment. It's all it all rounds out to the same thing. I mean, there's still a collaborative process and a back and forth and I personally love it. I don't like to just own one thing and be that person that just is responsible for that one project. I like it when people come in and give me feedback. I've learned to accept the feedback and use it. It's really valuable.
Okay, cool. And Mark, sorry to kind of exclude you from this one, but being in the team environment and being in that kind of situation where you're a part of a company and a part of how do you build and how can you contribute to a culture that facilitates collaboration and encourages that in a positive and healthy way?
You mean in a leadership position?
In a leadership position, as an individual contributor, because I mean, the four of us span these different roles in different ways, and you guys are very heavily film. So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on how do you contribute to that culture, especially you're at Framestore, you're working where you're part of an established team and you're collecting a steady paycheck from this one employer. I mean, Mark, your situation is a little bit different with people come to you. Mm-hmm. So how do you facilitate a culture of collaboration?
Well, I try to help the shows. So the way that it works in my company is we have a department, which in my case is rigging, and we have multiple departments. And inside each department, there's sub-teams that work on individual shows, so individual films. So it's sort of multi-layered, And it can be quite complex because working with other people, human beings, it's actually a whole topic of science. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. So what I try to do is make them little tools, even organizational tools. I make sure that the skill matches are good, and I've thought through how those personalities will play off each other and how they'll grow things that people are interested in learning, setting them up for those opportunities, and then creating little tools for all those people to work together. So, for example, cross-department, cross-show, cross-site location. It's such a wonderful world in visual effects. It's complicated, so we need to illustrate to each other what it is that we need from the other departments and what we're going to provide, so that everyone knows what the input and what the output is for each department, for each layer, and then we can start to see where things might slip through the cracks, for example, and illustrate that and communicate it in a way that everybody understands. So kind of rallying the troops, getting everybody on the same page, to get a common baseline understanding, and then they can start building on that on their own as a team.
Yeah, I'm learning something. My new position is it's a whole new world for me. I'm learning. I got more into previs for presentations and stuff like that for the upper management. Also working in media for the attractions. It's like Laurie said. It's like a part of the vision of the ride. It's not just I'm not just working on a commercial and kicking it out. It's a part of the experience. That when you walk past this piece of media, it contributes to the story of the ride, and it's a real fulfilling thing. The previous stuff that I work on is amazing. I can't talk about it, but it's it ends up going into, if it goes into production, then they take those designs and then they build on them. They send it to the vendor, and then the vendor builds on those designs, and it's strange because I'm used to finishing. I'm used to creating things that go right out on TV or right out on the internet or whatever. But these things that I'm working on now are very previs, very conceptual, and it's taken a little getting used to. I've been there about a year now, and I feel like I'm baby steps, you know.
Well, ask both of you guys. I mean, how do you deal with it then? But when a filmmaker comes back and says, "I hate it,"
It hurts. Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, we have artists, right? And they care. That's why we hired them. That was one of the criteria, right?
Yeah.
So we care about what we're building, and we put our fingerprints all over it, and we pitch ideas, and we try to get things done in the way that we think will make it the best. And we don't have a direct line in the artist pool with the clients.
Right.
There's a layer of supervision in between, and it can be quite harsh, Like you put forward an idea and you think it's really going to improve everything, and then it just sort of gets shut down, and it hurts, because it's because you have some investment, which is a good thing because you care, but it is a part of the process, and I think you just have to remember that like you are a contributor to something that's bigger than what you're doing. So, and also, you don't have the full context of the entire film, and that's something that the director has. So you have to trust them and not be deterred from bringing forward new ideas. But also, you pitch one idea to change something, and then they say no. You don't just take another idea to change the same thing. You have to have some common sense about persistence.
Right on. You had mentioned something earlier about like working with people, and people are just like these enigmas, and you hire people who care, and I think that's generally speaking, like most companies do that, most places do that, most production companies or productions, like they bring on people who genuinely care about doing quality work. And so how do you handle, there's those moments with that intent impact gap where they intend one thing and it impacts the project or you as a person negatively. How do you overcome those differences when you think maybe somebody's being a jerk when really they're just trying to do the best thing for the product?
Oof. Wow, I mean, I don't like to have to tell people how to do their jobs. I mean, I care. I treat every piece of anything that comes across me like it's going on my reel. That's just my work ethic. Mm-hmm. That's work ethic. That's something that you learn over time. If you're at a level or of a senior and you work like that, like I don't care anymore, you're either burnt out and you should leave, or you need to refocus and work with the people who do care and find that spark. And it's tough to work with people who don't care. I mean, I've literally taken projects away from people who are like working with me on something, not at the current place, but at other jobs. And I've taken those projects away and just said, I'll run this through. I'll take it through to the end, because it drags you down when people don't care about a project. Team members, even worse if a producer doesn't care.
Oh, yeah.
That's the worst, because now you have to, because that's where all the input comes from and the feedback. I've actually dealt with producers where they didn't care, and they would just take whatever I gave them, which to me, that means it was on me to go up above and beyond to create a better piece, because I know they're going to take it whatever it is, and I will never settle for less. So, yeah, that's a really tough thing to deal with, is people who don't care.
Yeah.
And on the flip side, there's people that care so much that it's like you have to manage them because they're like.
And then they'll miss deadlines because they care too much.
Exactly, and this is something I wanted to drive in because it solves 90% of my communication issues, and that is that. So many problems arise from somebody expecting one thing and getting another. Yeah. So if you can establish what the expectation is for even the smallest brief, even between colleagues, like I'm expecting this at this time. how do you feel about that? Is that doable? You make an agreement. You're both on board with that. You know, now you've established this link, and then and you follow up. You know, things happen in rigging. We basically run into technical problems every time we click a keyboard. You know, so. But yeah, just trying. If you get tasked with something and you don't really know what they're expecting from you, ask. You know, like get some clarification, because this is where a lot of like performance problems come from. Oh, they're not performing. Maybe they don't know what you're expecting them to do. Right. You know, and it's on you guys too, really, to make sure you know what they're expecting.
Mm-hmm. That's so true. I mean, I ask so many questions when I'm going into a project from the base. I've actually, on one of my reviews at EI, I swear to God, one person wrote, "He cares too much." It's on paper. Wow. He cares too much. I was asking her too many questions, and I was requiring her to go back to her producer to get me more information so I can start this project the right way, rather than go off in the wrong direction and have to redo everything. That's the worst thing in the world, by the way, is going off in the wrong direction, thinking that you have an idea without checking with the vision of the person who's running the project. There's no stupid questions. You just ask away. And sure enough, it's on my review. I have it on paper. He cares too much. It was the funniest thing I ever saw. Wow.
Yeah. Well, and we were talking in my last seminar we were talking a little bit more about reaching out to people, and somebody said, well, how many times do you write? Is it too many? Is this? And I said, well, you know, sometimes you got to learn how to read the room, right? And I think that's a very nebulous thing. And I found one thing, because you're working with so many different personalities, I learned this a long time ago. There's a thing in psychotherapy when you do family dynamics. You draw a circle and you say, okay, here's this, and how does this person interact? And I find sometimes that's a good thing to do with filmmakers, and is this person, who's running the ship, and where are the relationships, and what is the struggle? And if you can even visualize that on a piece of paper or something, and just say, you know what, these two people hate each other, and you know, this is the one. And you trust me, it happens on every show. Somebody's got an agenda. But sometimes even writing things down and trying to figure those out and really getting back to the basics, because you say sometimes that, well, how do I know? Well, sometimes you just got to step back, and sometimes visualizing those things, it is as easy as writing it down, and this is their relationship. After you've worked with people many, many, many times, you kind of figure it out, but sometimes I think starting out, that can be a really good tool.
Yeah, I actually had that recently. So I'm working on a project. We're creating a Hobbit game, and the designer for it was like, all right, we're going to march towards this thing. Like, what's our deadline for this thing? And I was like, how are you defining this milestone? Like, for you, what does first playable mean to you? And yeah, just let's establish expectations. Like, let's make sure we're all on the same page. I've seen that be critical so many times, and I've seen where it's really messed over a project.
Yeah, and it's something that projects are organic.
Yeah.
And those answers don't always exist, you know?
Sure.
Like, sometimes you can be like, what do you expect from me? And they're like, oh, I don't know. I don't know anything about what you do.
Yeah.
And those things change over time, too, because it's adaptable. It's like organic process. Something didn't work out, whatever. So reestablishing that expectation periodically, even in your teams, you can do this, like, you know, when you're at school. Makes sense. Just sort of assess the situation sometimes, and it's okay to pivot. You know, it's okay to change the direction, or you know, take a new approach to something that you'd previously agreed. Just as long as everyone is aware, you know, it's okay to change that expectation. But yeah.
I have a question just as a producer. So there's a lot of like, our whole thing is process, and like implementing process and being able to manage like pipelines and all that stuff. Do you feel like that stuff facilitates collaboration, gets in the way of it?
It's a great question, isn't it? I think it's a balance.
Okay.
I think tools
Sure.
and support are the key for me for successful production. It can go over the top, you know, like I want the artists to learn from each other and collaborate together so that they build a relationship, they trust each other, they learn from each other's skills. Like, that's what I want for the long term. And I think sometimes in visual effects, production can spend their whole day just figuring out what's going on instead of pushing the process forward, you know? So I think it's a balance. But yeah, setting some framework instead of step-by-step instructions, I think setting a little framework that that's designed for the problem that they're trying to solve can help to like, for example, like, okay, we're having a first catch up. This is our first milestone target. Let's work backwards. Let's come up with like just a simple, maybe like a weekly target. Like that's a process, right? Like how do you define that? Like all that stuff can be really helpful because it just helps to move things along.
Cool.
Well, I work in Florida, first of all. It's a very small market. So in order to stay relevant, I do a lot of the work myself. I'm not just an editor who cuts. That's a straight cutter. I do motion graphics. I do compositing. I do rotoscoping. I do match moving. I do everything. So the title editor encompasses all of that. So the pipeline is me and my manager, who we both do that together. So we have to manage our own pipeline, and it's really not departmental. We don't have to go to we don't have to export files and get them back, but we do have to manage the media. We manage the media for all the parks worldwide. We are the headquarters, and there's just 2 of us.
Oh, wow.
So we manage for Singapore, Japan, Hollywood, Orlando, and we're talking media for all the rides, for all of the in-queue media, all of the vendor final ride media, everything is in our building. So we have to establish our own pipeline with just the 2 of us.
I want to pick your brain later about digital asset management.
I think Laurie brought something up that made me think of something, and as we're talking about the subject of this kind of panel, I think, you just can't ever assume things, right? You can't assume anybody else knows what you're thinking. I mean, you mentioned it earlier, but I think the biggest trap I've ever seen anybody get into is they just don't ask a simple question.
Right, that's it.
And they feel like, oh, people aren't going to trust me. And it's like, no, people will have more respect for you if you actually, that's when they think you know what you're doing. And I think it really isn't making that assumption that the simple things are taken care of. And I think that's when people, I know that I've seen with filmmakers, that's when they appreciate, oh, this guy's looking out for me this. And it's not about thinking other people aren't doing it, it's about doing your job properly. And I think that's something that people really kind of lose sight of very easily. It's like the ABCs of all these things. I always say read psychology books if you're going to work in the film business, because it's a lot of different personalities. Don't assume anything else. Write things down.
Yeah, like sometimes in a freelance capacity, a producer will send me a script and send me assets, and she'll just say, go. I need this in 3-4 days. So I go over everything, and I automatically hit back question, colon, boom, 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 and I hit her with all the questions, and she's like, ooh, I didn't think of that. Okay, I'll go back to the client, I'll get back to you. And it probably saved me a day worth of work that I asked that question. I can't speak to how important that is about getting a project off on the right foot by asking all those questions. You can't ask too many questions up front. I would rather do that than go back and have to redo a whole bunch of work, and that's just time you can't get back. And it's very difficult to charge a client for work that it's seemingly your fault, basically, because you didn't ask the right questions up front. So
sometimes they don't know what they want, and that's the only way to find out too.
That's right, exactly.
They just don't know.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then it's your problem down the road when you don't give them what they don't want, or they don't know.
I always say they don't know what they want until they see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole field of risk management that we
Right.
could geek out about.
Right.
Because this is one of the biggest problems, logistical problems, is when there isn't a clear brief. And it's fair enough. I mean, if somebody asked me to totally design from the inside out a digital character and their entire performance for a movie I haven't even shot yet, I'd probably have a few doubts,
Yeah.
I take it that's happened a time or two?
It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's, we don't want to assume anything, but we also don't want to work in a vacuum. So sometimes when you can't get those answers, you do have to make a few preliminary plans, and then just do that iterative checking in and sort of paving your way through the abyss.
It's true. It's true. Sometimes there is no answers to the questions, so they say, so you just go ahead and make like 3 versions of something and send it to them. Just pick one that's close, and then we'll take that one and move towards the answer.
There's no way to get feedback. There's no better way to get feedback than showing them something that they don't like.
Exactly. I've done that on purpose. Make something really terrible and put it with something that I think is good, and then they're like, well, that stinks. Let's go with that, and let's go in that direction.
Has that ever backfired where you have the like, here's the thing I think is awful, and they're like, yeah, let's do that, and you're like, no.
Every day. No, I mean, sometimes you have to give people, I was just thinking something, I can't say it, but that is part of the process, because you have to, I use this example, but sometimes people will say, make it purple, and you're like, what the hell is purple sound? And you have to figure out what they're thinking and what they do or don't want. But I think there's also a point, I know where the point was in my career, but there's a point too when you're starting out, you're going to work with people. Most filmmakers are less experienced than you. Most producers are less experienced. And I think you start seeing that. I think it comes from familiarity and breadth of work with somebody in relationships, where you'll see that stuff kind of change. And I think it is definitely tougher when you're starting out, because people don't have any money, they don't have a lot of time, they're leaning on you, they want you to do more work for free, they want all that stuff. And I think, again, it's just always about taking a step back and kind of realizing where you're at and realizing the opportunity you have. And I've seen that time and time again, where as I'm getting older, it's a little easier, just because you kind of start figuring those pathways out. And there's no magic thing we can give to anybody. Everybody's different. Mm-hmm. And that's one of the best things about it too, is every film is different. It's a different personality, and this might be a cool director on this one, and it might not be such a cool director, but a cool producer on this one. And so that's all about seat time and just being there and doing it and getting years under your belt.
So in the interest of like kind of more working towards the Q&A and having a more open discussion, what are the things that you guys want to make sure that like you have a chance to talk about and harp on and soapbox, or however you want to frame that?
Don't take it personally. Even when it's personal, you can't take it personally. And I just say this all the time. If you're in the room and you're doing the work, they usually believe you can do it. Not to say you'll never get fired. And I will say this, I've been doing this for 29 years now, and I don't think I've ever been fired. I know I'll get like a tweet that somebody saying, you got fired off this thing, but you just have to realize that, again, you're there because people want you there in these situations. And most people that have been doing it for a lot longer than you, when you're coming into the business, they're putting their trust in you, but they want you to be there. And that's not about being egotistical or anything, but that's just understanding, okay, I'm here because I have something to add to the process. And I think if you always remember that, you'll do your best. So I think that's a really basic thing of like, if you're in the room and again, you make it past the day, then I think you can kind of start settling in and figuring things out and understanding. I think that's a really big thing. And when somebody yells at you about something that's not right, unless they're marching you out of the room, it's 99% of the time, it's not really personal.
That was one of the hardest things I had to deal with personally when I first got out into the design world, was taking things personally, taking feedback the wrong way. I got really upset sometimes because they're not exactly nice. Some people are not nice. I mean, I worked in one place where I was really proud of this edit. It was for the Florida Marlins. It was for the baseball team, and I'm a big baseball fan, and I've always dreamed about doing this kind of work. And the art director came in, and he looked at it, and he said, "Play it again." And he looked at it, and he turned around to the guy behind him. He said, "Who hired this guy?" Literally, that's what he said. So that hurt because I was pretty new at that time. I mean, I was terrified that he was just going to walk me out of the building after that. And everyone else loved it. Everyone in the building loved the spot. But that was the day that I realized that, okay, I have to back myself away from this stuff and actually just take the feedback and make the changes. And I did, and I let it go. And I use that from now on forevermore as the linchpin for do not be married to your work. no matter what you do. I know it's an emotional thing. You create something that you really feel like you love. But unless it's for you or your family or someone you know is going to love it, someone is going to dump on it. And it's going to be tough.
Did you work with those guys again after that?
Not for long.
Okay.
No, I ended up leaving. I was an advertising agency, and I was there, and I was working 80 hours a week. It was really tough. Wasn't seeing my family, and sometimes the feedback was just so brutal. I just couldn't do it anymore. So yeah, I ended up leaving. But I would say never be married to your work. Work is work. You're working. You're not there for yourself. You're there to make money and have a career. But what you're doing is you're contributing to the vision of the people who hired you. So ultimately, those are the ones that you have to, appease.
I don't have a big agenda, but I think that one thing worth mentioning in this conversation is about your own contribution. So, whether it's working in a team or working for a client or working in any collaborative zone, every day is an opportunity to make a difference. And it doesn't matter if you're on a project for 3 years or for 3 hours. That's an opportunity for you to make a difference, and figuring out how you best spend your time, getting the lay of the land, listening to what people need, and figuring out how you can help, how to be helpful and make a difference, no matter what the situation, will make you valuable in a lot of different scenarios.
Cool. Let's open it up for Q&A.
Hello.
We've got mics that are going to come around so that the people
Yeah.
online can hear.
So I'm going to ask a question really quick first. For a first-time person trying to get a group together to collaborate, how do you do the thing where you find out their best skills, including those people that don't care, and what advice would you say for someone who's in charge of a project for the first time with a bunch of people?
So speaking as a producer, one thing that I tend to do with new projects, especially when I've got new members on the team, I will kick off just like a brainstorming session. I'm like, all right, first 30 minutes, no idea is a bad idea. Everything goes on the board. Like, what do we want to do? How do we want to do this? And it gives some insight. Like, there's no substitute for spending time with a person and having a conversation and getting to know them. But that can give you some insight into the way that they think and into the things that get them excited. So I've seen, I've got this amazing tech artist who, he's kind of, whatever, it's cool that we're working on Lord of the Rings or whatever thing. And then as soon as it's like, oh, this is a technical problem? Okay, I'm interested. And then I've got other people where it's like, oh, we're working on The Hobbit? That's exciting. I'm excited to work with this content. So figuring out, are they excited about the IP? Are they excited about the problems? That can help steer that conversation. I'm sure you guys have other opinions.
Well, in a way, when I'm leading a team of people, one of the roles I'm playing in that is to champion them and to give them opportunities to make the work good and to improve their own skills. So there's no substitution for just building relationships over time. But in lieu of that, being thrown together with a group of random strangers, I think, setting up that environment where you can review the brief or come up with a brief if it's brainstorming together, and then actually having a conversation with everyone about the project so that you can start to unpick their interests and their skills and what they already know. And then you just have to do a first pass on distribution, and make sure everybody knows what to expect from each other. And then the same thing I said before, you just review the situation and try to get everyone a juicy steak. Something that they can get excited about for everybody to keep them motivated and give them the opportunity to share that with the rest of the team, because then they'll feel noticed and appreciated, even if their work isn't the most visible, which is often the case in teams. Some people are doing the hero thing and some people are doing something more behind the scenes, but it's still important. So finding a forum for that so that they can so it can showcase their skills and build their confidence and all of those things.
Well, and I don't build teams. We talked about it, but every film is a different team of people, so sorry. And I think, again, what I said is, it's just when you come into the situations, I'm just let's go in and listen for a day or two and see what else everybody's going to bring to it. And I just think that's one of the most important things. And you'll figure it out. And it's not that you don't say anything or you don't have any good ideas or you don't have any ideas to add. But I think, listening is so much, it's probably the most important thing in the group environments. And then the problem solving and all that can come later. But I think being able to listen from the go is hugely important.
Yeah. As an editor, I'm pretty much working a closet with no windows. So I don't have any direct reports, so I don't have any teams usually, but I do work with interns. So I always have an open door policy for any questions, feedback. If you want to show me reels, if you want to show me your ideas for projects, or even I'll even suggest, go, build something, and show it to me. I'd love to see it. And I'll help with any kind of software or hardware issues or things like that. I just want people around me to feel safe, like I'm not going to, pounce on them for any reason at all. I like happy people all around me when I'm working, so I will support and nurture, relationships at work with anybody around me, not necessarily somebody on my team. I always say hello to the receptionist or the security. I like to be known and to know the nice people in the building or in the company. I think it's very, very important that you can train people on software and hardware, but you can't really teach somebody to be nice. That's in your personality. Soft skills are huge. I learned all about soft skills on my way through these companies. So I think soft skills are very, very important.
Awesome. Next question.
Hello, my name is Chisholm Allen. I'm with the film program. From a producer standpoint, how would you do with confrontation with the people that work for you, or like towards you, or just between them?
Sure. So, for clarity, I'm a game producer. But I think that the simplest solution for conflict resolution is always at the lowest level. So encouraging people to, give people time to cool off, absolutely. If they're still heated, don't put them in a room together to talk about something. But do it, if it's in the middle of a meeting and you realize that there's some tension, hey, let's talk about this offline. Keep the meeting going, keep the production, keep whatever flowing, and then give them time to talk about that offline. And I've had times where people are not interested in resolving it and they want to stay bitter, and that's fine so long as it doesn't impact the project. You don't have to like who you work with. I think it's great if you do, but we're all people and we're not all going to always get along. I would hope that we could work towards something, but some people just don't click. Yeah.
And I'll add to that really quick.
Sure.
I think this is a little bit more of a life lesson too, is because I've been yelled at plenty of times, and I've seen people almost get into fist fights, and I've seen plenty of things. To me, it's always if I'm getting yelled at, I usually don't respond right away, and if people are, to me, time is always a good thing. So usually if people are that angry that they're going to yell or get angry or try and find somebody else to scream at, usually they'll huff, puff, and then they'll storm out. Mm-hmm. And then sometimes you'll follow them out and say, hey, what's going on? And it's usually 9 times out of 10, it's not about it's not because I mixed the music too loud. It's not because of this, because something else is going on, and they're over budget on visual effects, and they're being told to finish, or any of those. But again, I'm not a huge pacifist, but I'm always like, sometimes you just kind of step back, you let things boil over a little bit. And I think that's like anything. I think it's sometimes you just got to give people space and let them do it, and then, usually 2 minutes is usually, somebody storms out, I usually give them 2 minutes. Then I'll go find.
The worst thing you can do is is be combative with someone who's confrontational. It's the worst thing you can do is go back at that person. Better off just letting them blow off steam.
Yeah.
All right, and I think we have time for one final question. We're going to get you right here.
Hello, my name is Nathan, and I'm from the music business program. And my one question would be, like, how would you guys deal with some people that aren't willing to like change or adapt their mindset towards things?
Ooh, that's difficult. There's definitely, I've had instances of somebody who's like kind of locked into a certain mindset or locked into like, this is what we're doing. I try to understand where they're coming from and understand their perspective. So they have in their view a very logical reason for standing firm and standing by whatever stance or decision, and I think it's a bit presumptive of me to just discredit that outright. I think I need to take the time to understand their perspective, their view, what do they care about, and then sometimes you have to work towards some kind of negotiated agreement where nobody's happy, but and if you have that, usually you have a good compromise. But yeah, at the end of the day, like I tend to just remind people, like, we're here to make good games. Like, everybody here wants to do a good job. Like, let's focus on the product. But yeah.
I mean, in the end, how's it going to affect you, right? If you're working on somebody, it's a song, and you're like, I don't want to use this drum sample on the other. I know that we're going to use that. It's about, I think you have to define for yourself what's important. Is it important for me to go home and be happy at the end of the night? Is it important for me to keep my job? You know, what is this, and am I taking it too personally? Is it about me and my insecurities? And so I think you start, as you get older in life, you start defining what's important to you. And I think in the end, you decide, what is this the hill that I want to go up and the fight that I want to have? Because in the end, I think for everything that we all do, I mean, we're not brain surgeons, right? We're not saving lives. We all make really good livings making content that people really enjoy. And so I always try and keep that, in mind. Like, it's usually my insecurity that gets in the way of me if I'm having a struggle with somebody and I just think they're being completely ridiculous. And then usually in the end, I'm like, it doesn't matter, and it doesn't say a Marc Fishman film on it at the end of the day, and you got to you just kind of have to make those decisions for yourself.
And if you're trying to manage that, I mean, it's difficult, but because you can't change other people's behavior. You can just make them aware of how that's coming across in the work environment, and then you have to ask yourself a question as if it's affecting their job and their productivity, and then that's a different conversation.
Yeah.
It's not about them. So then it makes it maybe a little bit easier, because if they won't change their mindset, and if that means that they're not doing their job, then that's a different conversation.
That's what I was going to say. It depends who the person is, first of all. Second of all, if it doesn't impact the project, then it's just smoke. I would just let them blow off steam. But if it's impacting the project, you have to escalate that. You have to go to a manager, maybe HR. It depends.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Awesome job. Thank you guys for taking time out of your day.